Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We are a full service CX and UX consultancy, and welcome to episode 114 of our podcast. This is Overcoming Limited Access to Users. And in case you're from the future and you're wondering what day it is, so am I. My calendar says June 21, 2021. Can't believe it, 2021 almost half over. So we're going to welcome a super new guest with us today. And somebody introduced us, and I don't remember who, but thanks to that person. And so let's bring him right in right away. This is Daniel Engelberg. And Daniel, just for kicks, please spell your name and tell us all about your glorious history.
My last name is spelled Engelberg. I guess you've
Approved.
got my first name.
He's Daniel.
You can just call me Daniel or Dan.
Okay.
And I do UX and product and innovation. So I do strategic consulting, I do coaching, project accompaniment, and I also have a business on the side called Advanced Applied Thinking. I teach clarity and creative insight.
Cool. I'm sure we're gonna learn more about that in maybe some future episodes. Plot and
That'd be great.
plan. Yes. And hello to Charlene and anybody else who's watching now in the chat room. So today we're talking about limited access to users, which is so common in our jobs and in our consulting. And today I'm going to be throwing you some questions. And I know you've got some information that will help some of the newbies, some more advanced people, and some freelancers. So hopefully wherever the listeners are in their journey, there will be something for them today. So let's start when we're thinking about the idea of even interviewing for a job. I know many of our listeners get so excited, they interview for a job, they get to the job, and then they're like, holy poop, we're not really doing research right. They're not letting me talk to users. Is there something we can do before we even get the job or during the interview that would help us see this coming?
Definitely. The tragedy of UX design in a lot of organizations is that the UX designer comes in expecting to be able to do their work easily and with all the right resources. And the employer on their side expects the UX designer to just slot in to the existing processes without any changes. So both sides have incorrect expectations, and the interview process is a chance to correct those expectations so that you're both on the same wavelength. And this is the best time, because once you get into the organization, you sign the contract. That's it. It's too late to make any major changes. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. So what can people do?
So the first most important question to ask is, will I have access to users for analysis and testing? So hopefully they will say yes. And you can ask how often will I have? How much access will I have? How do you get access to users? So hopefully they'll say yes, and it's not a problem. But if they sort of look confused, or if they say no, or if they say, well, I'm going to have to ask someone about that, then you need to explain why you need access. Yeah? Because especially if you're the first UX person that they've ever hired, they might not realize that
it's a thing.
UX. So this is the thing. Most companies who haven't had experience with UX, they think the value of UX is in your knowledge. It's in the guidelines.
We're amazing guessers.
Yeah, but as you know, that's not the case. So you need to explain that to them. And why you need users, and why what you come up with is just a guess, but the real value of your role is in the knowledge and the certainty, and that requires the access.
Yeah, I like to say we're business intelligence.
Right. Oh, that's a really good term.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. I didn't make it up. It's out there. And what about
You know,
some
but it
I use
it's
it
it's
anyway. Sorry, this is a silly
it's
show.
good to use.
Yes, it's good to use. What about some questions people can ask during that interview process?
Okay, so beyond just access to users, there's a bunch of other questions that will set your expectations of what you're going to get into when you get hired. So you can ask, do you have other UX people in the company, whatever the organization, in the team? Will I be working with other UX people? Have you already worked with UX experts? Sometimes the company has worked with them. Sometimes they might have been consultants, but it's fine. It's as long as it's not their first experience. And then if they have UX people already on boards, you want to ask, do you have UX processes? Do you have a UX practice? So that those are higher levels of UX maturity. If you come into a company with UX processes and practices, you can be pretty sure that you'll have at least some access to users. And then you can ask other questions like, what department will I be responding to? So if you're responding to development, it's going to be different than if you're responding to product management, right? Because development has less understanding of the importance of users, and they're seeing you as more of a pair of hands to execute work and make things easier for them. If you're hired by product, well, you're going to have more of a strategic say, and they'll understand your need for users.
We certainly
So
hope.
all we hope, not always, but better chances. Okay. Um, so, and by the way, with access to users, I've had one case where, as an employee, I got that put into the contract,
Ooh,
and
and I will have access to users, or else what?
well, we didn't have an or else, but it
Okay.
was in the contract, and they honored it. They
Oh,
had no
good.
choice.
I like that. I like the idea. Everybody, think about that. If when you are getting an employment contract or maybe a freelance contract, see if you can put in it that you will have direct access. Please use the word direct because I've seen companies say, "Oh, we'll have the business analysts interview them and you can just get their notes." So, direct access to users and customers. That's super. What anything else you want to add to that?
No,
Okay.
that's those are the main points.
Just checking. And hello to Anna P. We haven't seen you in a long time. How the heck are you? Shannon's here. Hannah is here. Shannon says, I like that idea. Direct access to users. I know. Put in the contract. It feels good just saying it out loud. Thank you for that one, Daniel. So now thinking more for people who might be coming in more as a freelancer or agency, what can those people try to do to make sure they've got access to the right users or customers for their research or testing?
Okay, so if you're coming in as a freelancer or an agency, you have a lot more control. You have to take a more active role in preparing the client and possibly insisting on certain changes and access to users. So um, you can, so it's the same questions and points that you could ask from when if you were an employee, but you can add into that suggesting, well, if you'd like, if you want a longer term relationship, this could be partly a process role, a corporate change role. I could help you integrate UX processes into your organization. Um, and you can suggest other things, like, for example, if you don't have too much access to users right now, let's get let's subscribe to usertesting.com or some other
Hashtag not
service that
sponsored.
not sponsored. I've had problems even getting you know access to sales reps from user testing, but um, But that's like a $10,000 or
I
$20,000
thought they
investment. So
were I thought they were matching user Zoom's pricing, whereas like they wouldn't talk to you for less than $26,000 or something like that.
yeah, I think the last time I spoke with them, it was started at 20,000.
Yeah, which is not going to be in everyone's budget, but luckily they have competitors who are priced less.
Yes. So there's user Zoom. There's a few. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Um, so anyway, as a consultant, uh, you can prepare a presentation on your UX processes. Say, look, in 5 or 10 minutes, here I'll explain this diagram. It shows my processes, and then they'll understand exactly what they're getting into and what kind of resources that they're going to have to provide. So the last thing you want to do is just sign a contract. They have to, you have to be sure the client expects a change. Um, and one other thing is that you can ask them about, agile development. Most organizations are using agile, but how are they going to expect you to fit in with the agile process? And I know, Debbie, you have a whole thing about this.
I'll
I
be
have a
doing the
lot to
show
say.
on July 7th. I'm going to cover that
Oh,
topic. So,
okay.
yes,
So
but
yeah, I mean, I give training just on this. It's
me
an
too.
advanced topic.
Yeah.
Uh, and each organization, in my experience, needs its own solution for how to integrate UX. But there are some general. So, strongly recommend that you come back for Debbie's presentation
In
about
fact,
that.
won't you subscribe here on YouTube? And I want to mention that Shannon said, I've had the bait and switch on freelance projects. I asked for access to analytic info at the least. And after we got the work, after we got the work agreement signed, they came back with, oh, we don't have analytics set up. So in the contract.
Well, a contract isn't a guarantee, but in principle, it reflects a mutual understanding. But it's never a guarantee. I mean, you can sign a contract and the employer can cancel it. So,
So I'm trying to field a question from LinkedIn that I'm not fully understanding, so I'm writing back to them to try to get more color around it. So we will learn more about that question shortly. Um, uh, okay, so it sounds like we really need to be prepared for some of these workplaces or projects that might have obstacles. What's some of your advice around that?
okay. So there are two sides of the coin. One side is you want to set the best possible starting point and expectations. But the other side is that you need to be flexible and set your own expectations at a reasonable level. So, for example, if you're coming into an innovation type project or organization, then even if everyone has the best intentions, it's harder for an innovation project to get access to users because they might not have any users yet. They might not even be sure who their users are. So, so then it becomes a lot more challenging, and you might not. You'll have to be a lot more creative in those contexts. Another thing you need to take into account is that if you're the first UX person in an organization, they're going to have a learning curve, and there'll be some resistance initially. There'll be at least one or two people, chances are, who don't like the idea, who see it as encroaching on their territory. Uh, so, you need to be prepared for that. And I think patience is one of the most important character traits coming into that kind of context. I've been in situations where it took 2, 3, 4 years to change an organization's processes. I'd say 2 to 3 years is the standard amount for if you're not hired specifically
As a change
with the
agent.
goal of as a change agent.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take to change things from the ground up. You know, using
Right.
guerrilla techniques. Um, So adjust your expectation, lower your expectations for that. And finally, you have to be sensitive to timing. Okay, so sometimes you'll be hired kind of in the middle of a project. If you're hired as an employee, some projects are just starting, but some are ongoing. They'll expect you to jump in. So in that kind of a context, uh, they've already got their budget set, they have their timelines set, and if you start throwing, stuff into the gear work, saying, "Oh no, we've got to back up and do this differently, take more time," but so you're starting off with the worst possible, impression of you, and you need to show that you're willing to be flexible and that you understand the difficulties that they have. So you start in the middle of a project, go with the flow, and don't have a temper tantrum and insist on things that they can't provide.
Always good advice. I have a marketing friend who I interviewed in my book, and she talked about times where she's worked in marketing organizations, and the UX people, according to her, were having temper tantrums and saying, "Screw you, I'm taking my ball and go home." And so she saw us as inflexible, non team players.
Yes, sadly, that is sometimes the impression. So, so set a nice expectation, a nice impression first, and then once you get trust and friendship, then you can start increasing your demands,
Yeah, and
and
I
you can
think you
do it
can
up front.
always, yeah, and you can always say, I'm just coming into this project now. In the future, I probably would have planned it this way so that we have time for this. But, this time we'll go through it with the plan that you have now, but just know next time I'll probably present a different project plan. Um, Deanna is
Perfect.
asking a kind of a long form question in the LinkedIn chat. So I want to try to make sense of it and read it out loud and see what we both think of it. She's telling me a story about the employees at her companies were users, and it looked like the company required that all participants for studies had to be employees at least at the company at least 1 year. And she's wondering if you had something in your contract that required that you got to talk to the users, who I guess were employees, would this now make the contract void because the company's deciding they're only going to give you users there a certain amount of time? Does this, I know, I don't think you're a lawyer, but does that make the contract void?
I'd say if you can work with it, just go with it. The chances are that they won't give you anything else. So if you're worried that
Better
it
than
makes the
nothing.
contract void, yeah, I mean, if that's intolerable for you, if those users really don't provide what you need, leave.
Well, that's certainly one way, and I'm not a lawyer, but my thought on contracts is it doesn't make the contract void unless the contract says that breach of that particular clause would make the contract void. Very typically, contracts have clauses, at least in America, that say if any one particular clause is found to be non-enforceable, all the other clauses still stand. So I don't think that this would nullify a contract or void a contract unless the contract specifically says that it will. Like, for example, my contract says if you don't pay me, you don't get the stuff and you don't get the rights to the stuff. There's your
No.
consequence. If your contract doesn't say what is the consequence for this not happening, they could probably breach it and nothing would happen. But either way, I agree with Daniel. If your end users are your coworkers or company employees and they're giving you access to company employees, though for whatever reason they prefer that they're there at least a year, it's probably okay. Um, and
I
so,
think
yeah, go ahead.
in general, as a freelancer or an employee, you never want to be in a situation where you have to hire a lawyer because you're never going to win that fight.
No, so true.
Again, so it depends on trust, and if the relationship goes sour, you just leave. You finish
Right.
as much as you can do to on in a with the best possible spirit, the most helpful possible way, and then you leave.
Yes, I have many stories about leaving, but we won't tell them today. So that's not our focus. But Deanna, I hope that helps a little bit and answers your question as best as I've understood it. Let's also put up a question from Charlene before we move on to some topics we were thinking about talking about. Charlene, I know the question's cut off. I'll read the whole thing. Charlene says, "How do you get access to users in a B2B setup where the company's worried about and maybe too particular about the clients and do not prefer you as UX to talk because you might say something which could go negative?"
Yeah, well, so in a B2B setting, the marketing or salespeople, especially sales, will have access to clients, um, most likely. So you need to team up with them, and if worst comes to worst, they can do the interviewing. If the company doesn't want to, I mean, yeah, not ideal, but better than nothing. They can ask the questions. But I mean, if they're worried that you're going to ask the wrong questions or give the wrong impression, then you prepare the questions in advance and you get approval from the powers that be. And they have to start trusting you. Uh, well, why? The question is, why don't they trust you?
I'm thinking the
It's it,
same thing.
it's probably because they don't perceive you in a strategic role. They perceive you as sort of a very low level type of role. So
I don't think of Charlene as low level, but that's only because I've gotten to know her a little bit.
mm,
But yeah, I think that's true. And sometimes I wonder, I don't know if you can negotiate this, Charlene, but I wonder if someone can kind of give you a chance. Like, can you do the interviews with someone from marketing joining in or someone from sales joining in
yeah,
and watch how you handle it? I mean, I'm very confident in these situations. I once, a couple of years ago, quick story, I had a company, for some reason, they wanted me to interview some of their corporate shareholders. No, they wanted it was a startup and they wanted me to interview some of their early customers, but then I found out accidentally they were actual shareholders. And that got awkward fast. And I didn't know that. They didn't warm me up for that. They said they were early adopters. And I didn't realize they were investors. And a couple of them started like yelling at me during the call, like, "Why isn't the new version out yet? And we've invested in this, and when are these fixes coming?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I've been working here like 10 minutes." It was extremely awkward. And I said, in the future, if you're gonna, either you can't throw me shareholders or you have to be on the call with me so you can decide how to answer that.
that's a very good answer. Thank you.
Yeah, so sorry, story time, everybody. Um, Kayleen has an interesting question, and it's kind of a follow up to Shalene's question. Kayleen says, "Well, questions are meant to be super neutral, right? So, how could it be negative?" Daniel, can you think of an example of when a researcher is speaking to a customer or client, and other than my story, where something could go negative? And they're worried
Well, of
about how the
course.
UX person will handle it?
I mean, you're asking for opinions. You might be asking them, well, how happy are you with this product? So that they might blow their stack at that point. Um, it could be any number of questions that trigger a negative response, but you always want to keep them open-ended, right? If you keep questions open-ended as possible, then you'll avoid saying anything that implies there's a problem.
Right. And I personally always welcome people's negative stories or negative experiences because that's how we're going to, it's partially how we're going to learn what we need to improve. So it can't
Well,
all
that's
be
it.
sunshine and butterflies on these calls. We're going to hear that stuff's messed up.
Yeah, in a sense,
Oops,
you're
sorry.
there to bring that reality into the discussions. So they should thank you for it, that you've discovered that problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay when the people we're interviewing go negative. We just have to make sure we don't go with them and we don't go, oh, yeah, our product's terrible. And so is this company.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, no, you never point out a flaw in the product.
Right. Right. Thank you. All right. So moving on to a another topic I know we were thinking about covering, and that was now that we've hopefully negotiated a good contract and we've decided we're going to work at this place and and figure it out. Now we probably have to put together some project proposals or project plans. How are we going to use those to ask for what we need in the realm of the users?
Okay. So here's the thing. I don't know in your, well, the audience's UX training, if you got taught how to create a UX plan, how to estimate UX time, UX effort, and uh, all
Some
that
of the
kind of
audience
stuff. Probably
knows,
not.
yeah, some of the audience has experience with it and some of them don't. I would just say it's probably split.
Okay. Okay. So, so the most important thing here is to be involved in preparing the project proposal. So if you're typically if you're an employee, um, these projects are and proposals are whizzing past in the background, and it's not a manager's first instinct to consult you about them. But the first the first success is just to get them to show you the project proposals before they go out for your comments. And then once they see that you're giving intelligent and useful comments, hopefully they'll start asking you to get involved in preparing the project proposal. And that's where the real power comes in, right? So then you can really be sure to put in all the steps and the resources and everything. Uh, so that's get involved in preparing the project proposal, and include the UX activities, access to users, access to tools, any software that's going to be expensive, time, money, upfront analysis requirements. And then once, at the beginning of the project, you want to start with a UX plan. So the UX plan is more detailed than the project plan. Okay, it's all the details of what you're going to be doing, and you can present that to the team and to the project manager and get their buy-in. They need to have that. That is another tool for setting expectations.
Yeah, great advice. I know that when I'm building these, I'm definitely including how many users I intend to include at different stages and whose job it is to recruit them. Because sometimes my clients are going to recruit them because they might already have large pools or databases, or they have in-house research coordinators who we're partnering with. And sometimes it's our job to do the recruiting. So it might be good to detail that as well. And of course, how many people you're expecting to work with. And don't forget how much incentives will cost.
Yeah, so a lot of clients don't realize there are all these recruiting companies for user testing and interviews. So just they don't have to provide their own clients. They just need to hire the recruiting companies.
Yeah, true too. I find sometimes it's most powerful when you get a part of your population who knows the client or the product or the site, and some population who's never seen this before and is coming in cold.
Absolutely. You need a mix.
Cool. Hey, don't forget, does anybody have any questions? And just, of course, a reminder, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Ring that bell to be notified when we are live, which is roughly 4 times a week. Have empathy for the like button, won't you please? And of course, Kayleen reminds everybody that the videos do better in the YouTube algorithm when you comment on them. So thank you for all the live chatting, but please also swing around and leave some comments on the video as well to help us out. Algorithm, we all live and die by the algorithm. So thank you there. So, thinking about research, I know we're thinking about kind of primary research where we're going to talk directly to people, either because of generative research or evaluative research and testing. But sometimes an important part of especially early research is what we typically call secondary research. Now, especially for some of the newbies who tend to join us in the shows, can you kind of explain what secondary research is and show how that can help us reach some of our goals, especially when we can't get primary access to users?
Sure. So here's where it gets creative. And, in standard UX training, they usually only teach you about primary research. But let's say you don't have easy access to users, there's a lot of things you can do to still get useful information, even if you're not directly talking to users. So, and you can get that from outside your organization and from inside. So let's start with outside your organization. Well, one of the most valuable things to do is to look at what the competition is doing. Now, they the competition has faced a lot of the same questions that you'll be facing. So it's a starting point for understanding the range of possibilities. Don't take it as gospel truth because a lot of the competition hasn't done user testing. They haven't had maybe even a UX person on the project, but it's a baseline for understanding and for asking questions. Um, so so that's absolute basic requirement. And on YouTube, there's images and video. There's videos on the competition's website. They usually post at least a few screenshots. There might be how-to videos, um, and your own sales and marketing team might have done a competition analysis. So ask them if they have before you do it yourself and reinvent the wheel. And they often have access, to competitor software or something. Okay, so um, just don't assume the solutions are good. Just use them as a
They
starting point,
usually
as a
aren't.
comparison. Right. Um, the other thing you can do is consult published best design practices in the domain of your project, and so some of those are just available for free on the web. And some of those are published as white papers, like Nielsen Norman Group periodically. But I don't want to. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just saying that there are all kinds of group of companies that publish valuable white papers that could save you weeks of research. They sometimes cost a few $100s or over 1,000, but it's usually worth it. So try to get a budget for that. Remember design patterns. There are UX and UI design patterns published on the web and in books that can save you some effort. Again, design patterns don't always apply perfectly, but it's a starting point. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Gartner and Forrester. They're business intelligence websites that publish market studies on, you know, on domains of software. So sometimes they have a study that you can find it. They've got the magic quadrant stuff and everything. And so again, it's not perfect, but it's something. Um, and so that's outside your organization. But inside your organization, you're also going to find valuable information, possibly. You never know. It's a fishing expedition, okay? So you have to ask around. Go to marketing and sales, ask them if they've done a competition analysis, or at least if they have some screenshots. Ask them if they have some Gartner or Forrester studies. Ask if there's a user manual. If the application exists already, it might have. You never know. They used to be more common. Or there might at least be a requirements analysis document. Usually there is some kind of business level document written for, and you can go to customer support because they might have a list of customer complaints, which could be very useful for understanding the current issues if the software already exists. Um, Marketing might have some personas. You never know. Um, and the business people might have corporate objectives for the project that are written. So this is all, it's all secondary. It doesn't give you the direct answers, but it all helps and it comes together into a picture. And finally, as the development team, I think sometimes we underestimate how much developers really understand about users. Some front-end developers take an active role, and they've even worked with users. They might be kind of experts in the domain. So ask the development team if they have someone like that.
Yeah, when I think of secondary research, I know for me, a lot of times I am just talking to customer support and sales as much as possible because they tend to touch the customers who didn't buy from us, almost bought from us, left us, complained to us. And typically, if I can get a dump from those people or interview them and some sort of exported file, I can get a little bit more of the lay of the land. We have a couple of follow-up questions, if you don't mind me bringing those in at this time. So let's go in chronological order. Thanks to all the people asking. I'm going to start with Shannon, and she said, how do you deal with team members you work with who feel it's appropriate to gaslight users after testing has shown negative feedback or exposed issues? For example, a coworker might say, well, something must be wrong with their device. How do we deal with that?
Well, if it's just a one-off case, then I mean, you need to show that other people have had the same problem. If only one user has had that problem, there's no way you can prove it.
It does look a little bit isolated. Yeah, I wonder, can you reproduce the error? That's usually QA's first steps is, can
Yeah,
we follow the same path this person did and reproduce this error?
yeah, sure.
All right. Let's see. And let's circle over to your friend, Larry Marine, who's here to heckle both of us, I'm sure.
Oh,
And
hi,
he
Larry.
says, one of the biggest issues in B2B projects is getting access to the users who decide not to become a customer. What works for you to find those users?
Oh, I've never done that.
Oh,
I've it's the kind of thing that would have to go through sales, or you can it doesn't even have to be cust customers who've refused the product. It could be just people or organizations that aren't yet customers. But I don't have a magic wand for that.
yeah, it sounds like we would have to go through more normal channels to try to recruit them, like through panels or agencies to try to find the people who uh, I can't find the right word, who checked out this particular product or service and either hasn't made a decision yet or didn't buy it. So
Yeah.
you
But
probably
but but
need
look,
help.
a lot of those businesses that aren't interested, that they're not interested because of the utility more than the usability. So they might not be the best people to ask to do user research on, but still very important to understand. I mean, hopefully sales would have done an extra interview to understand why they chose not to buy.
Right. We
So, and
hope we hope they have that intelligence and that they can share it with us.
right.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions queued up. Abby is here. Hi, Abby. And Abby says, usability testing and contextual inquiry. Do they need to be the same set of users, or will different sets do?
Well, different sets are always nice.
Right.
And then you can validate one against the other.
Good point. Okay. Oh, now Larry's just getting personal in the chat room here. Let me put this up. By the way, Daniel, it took me 10 years to find a way to spend the Canadian $10 bill you gave me. So now
Well, you've already spent it. You see, if you had contacted me, I would have traded it in for American for you.
now we're getting into the old stories here. We're going back a ways. Okay, and then we've got Larry. He does not enjoy competitive analysis, and so he said, doesn't competitive analysis assume the competitors are solving the right problem? And if they're solving the wrong problem, what do you gain from a competitive analysis?
The analysis doesn't assume anything. It's up to you to stay aware, stay on top of the issues, and if you think they're solving the wrong problem, then don't do that competitive analysis. But you can find out, by doing the competitive analysis, you could realize, oh, geez,
They suck
these
too.
guys are off track. We
Yeah,
can do so much better.
that's true.
So always ask why, and you use it as in an enlightened way as a tool.
Keep the critical thinking hat on. Do not assume the competitors got it right.
Yes.
All right. Well, we made it through that round of questions. So I think in our notes we had another topic we were going to look at, and that had to do with documentation. I know that in a lot of the questions I get here on the channel and in talks I do, I tend to advise people to document not just their processes and what they did, but also risks and obstacles and conflicts and unknowns. So, knowing that sometimes not being able to get access to users is an obstacle or a risk or an unknown, what advice do you have about dealing with this when we or our teams are lacking information?
Okay. So here's the thing. We're taught to document what we know, but in this kind of a situation, the most valuable thing is to document what you don't know. So to begin with, keep a list of open questions. You want to keep that in front of you at all times. You're going to add to it whenever a question pops up. It could be in a meeting or while you're doing research on your own or while you're designing. Take it with you into the shower. You never know when you're going to need it. And you are going to use that list of questions for two purposes. First of all, that list of questions is often going to track back to what only users can answer, right? So when you have project meetings or Scrum meetings or meetings with your supervisor, you take the most important open questions and you say, listen, I can't even advance unless I know what users need to do on this. So can we get access to users? And if not, well, that's a risk. I'm just going to have to invent something and it might not work.
Well, if I can
So
jump
they'll,
in, it
but
sounds like in an agile environment or a pseudo agile environment, we should be bringing this up in the stand up or in the retro, that this was something that blocked us.
yes, so this is the wonderful thing about Agile. The role of the Scrum Master is to understand and solve blockages. And you should be raising your blockages, which include these open questions that need access to users. And then you raise them, it actually becomes the Scrum Master's responsibility.
Ooh, I'm going to play the applause sound for this. I think we have a winner, everybody. Dump this on your Scrum Master or project manager or somebody whose job it is to unstick the team. Sorry to interrupt, but I had to get that in. Go ahead.
Okay, so you're going to use this list of questions partly to sensitize, to explain the knowledge gaps to your team, and partly when you start meeting with users, you'll use that to formulate your questions and your user testing if you get that far. But you need to explain to the team why that missing information is critical. And okay, so here I do have a magic wand for one kind of problem. You know, in every single project, you have design meeting discussions where you come up with a proposal and someone else on the team doesn't agree, right? Usually someone who doesn't understand the users and UX principles, and you get into this battle of opinions. Okay, so how can you handle that? Well, the first thing is you need to come into the meeting with a justification for every one of your design decisions. And if your design decision might be based on a guess, so you have to be honest with people. You say, okay, look, you're right. I made an intelligent guess here because I don't have the information. This is an empirical question. Let's find out with users. Or let's do two designs, yours and mine, and we'll test both.
I've done that too.
And we'll see. So avoid those, battles of opinion that you'll never win, because in those contexts, it's whoever talks the loudest or has the most power. So it's not going to come down to a rational decision.
Right, right. Yeah, great idea to let the users decide, and then we're going to have access to them to do the testing.
Exactly.
All
And
right, what else?
developers especially are rational and they understand logic.
Well, I always tell people
Um,
that usability testing and this type of testing is the QA of UX. You're going to QA your code. We need to QA our concepts. Why would we move forward with an untested concept we're guessing at? That's what you can tell them.
Now, in continuing on this, documenting what you don't know, you can continue that. So initially, you'll document it in the exploration and the requirements process, but you can also document it in the visual design and the prototype. So let's say you're not sure about a design element, you add a note to it in the prototype. It can be, or it can just be a kind of sticky note in the InVision or whatever. Put a question. And if you're like so uncertain that you don't even know what to do, well, then don't put a solution, just put a blank placeholder and say, listen, something is going to come here. I don't know what it is yet. We need to find out with users.
Fair enough.
So that puts it in everyone's face. We absolutely need information from users.
Blocked again.
And right. Finally, the less information you have up front, the more that moves effort to the back end of the process. Okay. So it means you're going to have to do more testing with users. If you haven't analyzed requirements with them up front, you're going to have to iterate on solutions more. It's possible that you're completely off track. You might have to start over from scratch. So be prepared that, we in UX, the attitude is always, well, we have to move forward with one convergent design at all times. But the reality is, if you're uncertain, you need to be able to pursue multiple alternatives simultaneously, and keep those in your pocket.
Agreed.
And you should look for a tool that, a design tool that helps you manage those alternatives. So the whole stress of designing is about making decisions about things that are uncertain, for these forced arbitrary decisions. So if you're not sure, do multiple designs and do A/B testing.
Yeah, first usability. I always like to usability test before A/B testing, just so my B is
Sure.
not garbage. And
And
Larry's
okay,
being snarky, just very quickly.
uh-oh.
He's heckling today. He says, you could always offer to help the developers write their code or the product manager plan the product rollout. After all, they're offering to help you with the design. Just kidding, of course, says Larry. Larry's being a troublemaker today.
Okay.
Sorry, back to you, Daniel.
On to more useful suggestions. Uh, okay. I have one more magic wand for you.
Cool.
Uh, and that is automated user testing, like user testing, user Zoom, try my UI. This this is revolutionary, okay? Because it means you don't have to argue about getting access to your employer's users. These automated testing services provide their own users.
So you mean like an
And that's part,
unmoderated study?
yeah,
Okay.
unmoderated studies. That's why they're so expensive, $20,000. But that's like for unlimited use. So you can use that testing on even one little question you have in your project. You set up a micro test on that, and you can do this every day if you want. So I mean, literally, that changed my life when I had access to it in my projects. And strongly, you need to set up a business case. You need to help your employer set up the business case because it's a big investment, but maybe other departments will want to have access to it, so it's a game changer.
Yeah, and I also want to mention, especially for people not in these larger enterprises, that there are more affordable solutions out there. And again, I'm going to give you a couple of names that we just used, but this is hashtag not sponsored. I might recommend somebody
Not
totally
sponsored,
different a month
yes.
from now.
I,
Nobody's paid me to say this. So
I
we
don't care
just
what you use.
yeah, exactly. We just did some usability testing of Axure prototypes. We had two different designs, and we got 12 people through userinterviews.com by running a screener survey and finding certain types of people who would match our target users. And then we used UX Tweak. We did have some technical problems with it, but they did fix them. And they want under $200 per month for unlimited usage of their system, I think. So for ultimate and user interviews wanted $60 a person. So that was a really nice usability test of two different concepts that was completed within a couple of days, and it cost us under $1,000. So I just want to remind everybody that there's definite ways to do this that can be quick and inexpensive for companies. Not everybody is a $20,000 investment. Not sponsored. Sorry, I had to mention that. And Larry says unmoderated tests work well enough when the task is small or narrowly designed, but not really that successful for complex tasks. Do you want to add something to your thoughts on unmoderated versus moderated?
Yeah, well, the real limitation is that these are sort of general users who aren't necessarily experts in the domain. If you have a specialized type of software, like scientific or technical software, then, well, it's kind of 50-50 what kind of results you'll get. Um, So you need to take that into account. It's best for mass market type of application.
Yeah, for sure. But you really never know who you're going to get. And sometimes that's the fun of it. So while I let everybody know what's coming up with some of the live shows here in the calendar, and before we say goodbye to Daniel, please put any of your last questions in the YouTube or LinkedIn chat room as I'm monitoring both. We've just got a few minutes left today with special thanks to Daniel. So quick show notes for everybody. Today is Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday, which means office hours, ask me anything at usual time, 6:30 p.m. Italy time. Come and ask your questions. They're free. Then that looks like it until Friday's reaction stream. So come watch me react to the crazy crap y'all send in. If you want to send in crazy crap, please send it to deltacx.link/reaction. It's kind of somewhere there on the screen. Then I will put it on the list and I will react to it. But please send me a note of what you want me to react to, because some of these things you guys send, I'm like, what am I looking for here? So please, there's that. Let's see, Monday, I'm going to the dentist, and then I'm going to be doing a live stream on breaking your company's addiction to UX workshops. You're gonna want to see that. Tuesday, office hours, ask me anything. Nobody on Wednesday. Friday, reaction stream. I want everyone to set their calendars for first week of July. Tuesday the 6th will, of course, be Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Wednesday the 7th is going to be my new slides on how to make UX more agile and more lean, but not in the ways you think. I have some crazy disruptive ideas on this that I'm very excited to present. And these are going to be presented in a way for you to use them as ammunition at your workplace. So be there, no charge. And it's also Dr. Nick's birthday, but he won't be there. He'll be out partying. Larry says, great seeing and hearing you again, Daniel. Thanks for doing the show. That's my line. Yes, great to see you, Daniel. Thanks for doing the show. Larry, get out of here with doing my lines and everything. So, Daniel, knowing we just have a couple of minutes left, what's your parting words on this? Any last points you want to make? And, of course, where can everybody find you and follow you?
Last words. So there's one final key lever I've discovered, which is that if all else fails, write out the risks. Instead of fighting the project or the project managers, just tell them, I understand you don't have time or resources for me to meet users, but these are the risks. I think there's a 50% chance that we could be completely off track. If so, your developers are coding the wrong thing. We could end up, back at the drawing board in 3 months or 6 months.
Right, having spent all this budget.
But put in a nice way, okay? Not in a threatening or angry way. Just helpfully, okay? It's what you would want to hear if you were managing the project. So at that point, they're confronted with the reality, and you have shared the responsibility. Okay, so if the project goes south, you have it documented. You've done your best with with the information you have, and you were forced to go that way, and then the manager says, okay, my ass is on the line, this is written down, maybe I'll make a little more effort.
One can dream of this. Thank you so much. Great stuff, and lots of thanks earlier to the questions, Abby and other people. Thank you. And where can we find you, stalk you, follow you? Where are you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. Just look up Daniel Engelberg. There's not a lot of them, and you'll find me. And I also have a website, advancedappliedthinking.com. You can reach me through there, but I'll be happy. Send me a text message through LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer you.
Super. Now everybody knows this is someone you can bug later. All right. With no other questions in the chat room, and knowing we're down to the last seconds here, I will just say thank you again, and I look forward to having you on the show again if you will do it. I know it's a high stress environment with Larry heckling you. So he does it to me all the time.
I'll prepare some answers for next time.
Right, exactly. If Larry asks this, say this. And Charlene says thank you. So I'm going to play us out of here and say goodbye to everybody. See you tomorrow. Please remember to wear 12 masks with filters and play it safe, and be as safe as you can. Thanks, Daniel, and see everybody soon.
Pleasure.
Bye. Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training.
Contact us for a free consultation